Talks of expanding the college football playoff even more are already underway. The College Football Playoff Committee is now having discussions about a 14 team playoff before we even start the first season of the 12-team playoff. But would a 14-team playoff be a good or a bad thing for LSU?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out on YouTube as well. Search Locked On LSU in that YouTube search page. Hit the subscribe button and you'll get notified as soon as new episodes of Locked On LSU drop. Today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. All right, well, let's get into it because this was broken by our friend Ross Dellenger last night on Wednesday night that the College Football Playoff Committee is meeting about a 14-team playoff. Now, we heard this news come out, I guess, last week that there were at least rumblings going on about this. One thing that I've learned in college football is, and really just in sports in general, if they're talking about it, if there are preliminary discussions, there's just rumblings coming out about it, it's going to happen. Like when we heard rumblings about Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, yeah, who's joining the SEC? When we had rumblings about a 12-team playoff, guess what we're having this year? See, catch my drift? So this is going to happen, and it's going to happen in 2026, very soon. So the model, what we heard the news last week, we now have at least a clearer vision of what the 14-team playoff would look like. This season and next season, in a 12-team playoff, it's the 5+7 model. 5 automatic bids for conference champions and 7 at-large bids. Makes sense to me. We now have a power of 4 since there's no Pac-12. That opens the door for a 5th conference champion, whether it's in the group of 5 or the Pac-2 or whatever. So, 4 conference champions plus that maybe group of 5 team conference champion and then 7 at-large bids. In a 14-team playoff, this is the proposal and this is the model that is under consideration. The SEC would get 3 automatic bids. The Big Ten, 3 automatic bids. The ACC and the Big 12 would each get 2 automatic bids. Group of 5 would get 1. That leaves 3 spots for at-large bids. So a majority automatic bids based on your standing in your conference. So is this a good thing or a bad thing for LSU? Yeah, that's really all we care about here, right? Like, how does this affect LSU? Should I like it because it's good for my team, or should I hate it because it's bad for my team? That's how we operate around here. Honestly, the answer to that question is, frankly, it just depends. Because in this proposed model, some years it could benefit LSU. Others, it could totally screw LSU. Let's talk about 2022. If the 14-team playoff existed in 2022, LSU would have gone to the college football playoff because LSU was the second best team in the SEC. Regardless of 3 losses or not, LSU, second best team in the SEC, they would have gone. Now, 2023, LSU finished this season ranked 13th. So you would think, well, top 14 teams, LSU ranked 13th. That means that they would get into the college football playoff. Not necessarily, not in this model. Because in this model, let's apply the 14-team playoff to the results of this past season. Now, I'm taking this from the final college football playoff ranking. The final rankings, AP Might look a little different, but this is the final college football playoff ranking because that's the one that matters. So, if the 14-team playoff model that is being considered by the college football playoff was applied this past year, your Big Ten representatives, number one, Michigan, number two, Washington, because remember, Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA are joining the Big Ten. Number two, Washington. Number seven, Ohio State. I don't have any problems with that. In the SEC, it would be number three, Texas. Again, Texas and Oklahoma joining. Number three, Texas. Number four, Alabama. Number six, Georgia. With those six teams that I just mentioned, like that's a great playoff. Like those are all really good teams, championship caliber kind of teams. The ACC automatic bids. Number five, Florida State. Again, another one that's now seven teams that very much so could have contended for a championship. This is when you start to lose me. The second bid from the ACC, the second automatic bid would have been number 15, Louisville. I don't think so. Big 12, number 14, Arizona, and number 20, Oklahoma State. Your group of five representative would have been Liberty. So that leaves three at-large bids. So those three at-large bids would have gone to number 8, Oregon, number 9, Missouri, and number 10, Penn State, which leaves out number 11, Ole Miss, number 12, Oklahoma, and number 13, LSU. So in this structure, it would have screwed LSU over because number 14, Arizona, number 15, and if you just go by ranking, in a 14-team playoff, Arizona would have been in. But number 15, Louisville, number 20, Oklahoma State, and number 23, Liberty would have gotten into the playoff over a number 13, LSU because this model prioritizes what conference you're in rather than how you're ranked. So, is this good or bad for LSU? Honestly, sometimes I think it can be a good thing, right? Because you can think, well, it's very feasible that LSU could be the third best team in the SEC on any given year. And in a 4-team playoff, if you're the third best team in the SEC, you're not getting in. In this playoff, you get an automatic bid. In this instance, you are a top 14 team, but you'd be out of the playoff. Teams that you were ranked above would get into the playoff. So does it help or hurt LSU? Honestly, it just depends. Does it help or hurt any team in college football? Frankly, it just depends. So, how do I feel about it? I'm going to give my thoughts and my opinions on expanding the playoff even further, and we'll get into that coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That is what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and to bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we're part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. And Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So find Locked On Sports Today right now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. Rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Again, the news coming out on Wednesday evening that not only are there conversations about a 14-team playoff, there's already a model. 3 auto bids for the SEC and the Big Ten, 2 auto bids for the ACC and the Big 12, one auto bid for the group of 5, which leaves 3 at-large bids. Honestly, I kind of like an expanded playoff. I know that whenever we talk about playoff expansion, more often than not, it's met with moans and groans and complaints. I like having more games that matter. I like having more games that mean something. Because I feel like it's the same people that complain about playoff expansion that complain about how bowl games don't matter, that complain about bowl game opt outs. Well, what do you want? Do you want more games that mean something or not? I, for one, am in favor of more quality football games with championship repercussions and more games that players want to play in. Now, I am concerned that this could potentially lead to more opt-outs in the playoff. Like, let's say if a group of 5, number 23 Liberty, and I'm just going to pick a random team here, who's going to take on number 6 Georgia. Well, if I'm a Liberty player, do I want to play in that game? Probably, because I think a lot of them are competitors and they want to compete. They want the opportunity to compete for a championship, but we might look at it and say, well, I don't think we're going to win anyway, so I'm just going to opt out. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to risk hurting my draft stock. Like, that might come up. I don't think it's going to be the norm. But that is a concern of mine. But overall, I am in favor of more quality matchups, good games that mean something that could potentially get you to a national championship. Because as much as we want to talk about New Year's Six Bowls, let's be honest, we all saw it on full display at the Florida State Georgia game. There were so many Florida State players that were so pissed off about not making the playoff. They didn't want to play in that game. Ohio State, Missouri, there were a ton of opt outs in that Ohio State, Missouri Cotton Bowl. And it's because, it's a New Year's Six game. And you're going to be in a prime time slot. And we always say that those games mean more. But ultimately, it's not going to get you to a championship. So I'm in favor of more good games, of more games that mean you can win a championship. I also think it's great that you're going to be playing those games at home, like on college campuses. How fun is that? I mean, that's how I feel like playoff games should be played at the college level. Because NFL playoff games aren't played in third-party sites. No, they're played at home. So I'm excited about that. And of course, it exists in a 12-team playoff. But I'm in favor of more good games. I understand the sentiment of this is all just a money grab. Duh. Of course it is. Of course it's all just a money grab. That's all anything is about these days. That's the direction of college football. That's what sports is. It's all about making more money. It's all about how can I get a couple more dollars to line my pocket. Is that depressing? Hell yeah, it's depressing. And it's sad. It's sad that the sport that we love has turned into just a money factory. But we're not going anywhere. It's not changing anytime soon. It's not all of a sudden going to turn into a nonprofit organization. Like, these are for-profit businesses. The SEC is a for-profit business. And money has never been more important in college football than it is right now. I mean, like, the going rate for a head coach in college football is $10 million a year. That ain't cheap. You have to pay players $6-7 million, $6 to 7 figure salaries, $6-7 million for the good ones, 6 and 7 figure salaries, essentially, in an NIL. Because let's be honest, that's what it is. NIL was originally created so the mom and pop shop down the street could get a couple of commercials from the star linebacker. But that's not what it is. You know it. I know it. We all know it. As soon as the toothpaste was out of the tube, we knew that there was no going back and there was going to be absolutely zero limit to it. So money's important. That's exactly what this is. The reason why the SEC and the Big Ten get more automatic bids than all the other conferences, well, one, it's because that's a more competitive conference, but it's also because the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be bringing in 30% of the revenue from the college football playoff in the proposed 14-team model. The SEC and the Big Ten would bring in 30% each. 60% of the college football playoff revenue is going to the SEC and the Big Ten. That's crazy. And we're talking a $1 billion deal between ESPN and the college football playoff between 2026 and 2031. So like this is going to happen, and it is a money grab. It's all about money, and that's a shame. But I'm not going to let that get in the way of me enjoying quality football games. No, I'm going to enjoy it because NIL has been legal the last 2 seasons in college football. Whenever you sit down to watch an LSU game on any given Saturday in the fall, are you thinking about how much money is being made from all of those teams and all of those individual players? Heck no. You're thinking, how are we going to convert third night against this defense? That's what I'm thinking. So I like it. Like, I like more teams in a playoff. We're going to get to 16. Like, we had a 4-team playoff this past season, and we're already talking about 14. We're going to have a 16-team playoff. And once we have 16, it'll be 18. And once we have 18, it'll be 24 until we get to the point where we're at a field of 64 and it's going to be March Madness on grass. I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but also like we could be getting there. So overall, I like the idea of more teams in the playoff. I just hate the structure. Like, I absolutely despise the structure. 3 at-large bids? Are you kidding me? Like, let's just say, okay, so the SEC has 3 automatic bids. ACC has 2. Put up the 4th best team in the SEC against the 2nd best team in the ACC. So this past season, that would have been just based off of rankings, Ole Miss, Louisville. Now, Louisville was a good team this past year. I'm putting my money on Ole Miss. Ole Miss, Oklahoma State. Ole Miss would be about a 9.5-point favorite in that game. But Oklahoma State would be a playoff team and Ole Miss wouldn't. So I don't like that. I think a playoff, I like the thought of a 4-team playoff of get the 4 best teams in. That's what a playoff is, right? Like, it's not an invitational. It's not a congratulations on being the 2nd best team in your conference. You get to go to a playoff bowl. It's a playoff with the best teams in the country. I don't want any conference politics involved in that. So I hate the proposed structure. I hate that you would only have 3 at-large bids. The more at-large bids, the better. Now, in the 12-team playoff, which we'll have this upcoming season, I like 5 plus 7. 5 automatic bids to the conference champions because I appreciate that conference championships mean something, and I would like to maintain the integrity of conference championship games. You get an automatic bid, you get a first-round bye, you should be incentivized for winning your conference. But you have more at-large bids than you do have automatic bids because that's the fun. That's the fun part, is the rest of the best teams in the country competing for a championship, competing for that spot. So, like the idea, hate the model. Let's just get the 14 best teams. What about that? Isn't that crazy? Isn't that what every other playoff in sports is? Just the best teams battling it out? Come on. Who wouldn't like that? All right, coming up next, Harold Perkins is going to move to the inside. He played 1 game at inside linebacker against Florida State, moved him back to Sam linebacker. He's going to go back to inside linebacker per Brian Kelly in his sit down with Wilson Alexander of the Baton Rouge Advocate. And a lot of you feel some type of way about it. We will discuss coming up next. All right, I want to tell you about FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. So bet on all of your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. There is a wide range and array of things for you to bet on FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's so fun. I love to just open the app and poke around, see what the conversation is, see what people are talking about, and of course, put your money on whatever you want to put your money on. Just visit fanduel.com/locked on and shoot your shot. Again, that is fanduel.com/locked on, and new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So we learned Wilson Alexander of the Baton Rouge Advocate sat down with Brian Kelly, and Brian Kelly shared with him that Harold Perkins will move back into inside linebacker this season. So Harold Perkins' first year, he was on the edge. He was more of a quarterback spy, more of a go out and do whatever the heck you want to do. Last season against Florida State, Harold Perkins played at inside linebacker and essentially did nothing. He had 5 tackles, 0 sacks, and really, for the most part, was a non-factor against Florida State. You can't afford to have Harold Perkins be a non-factor. So after that game, they moved him out to a Sam linebacker position, and a strong side linebacker is what Sam means. And Brian Kelly shared with Wilson that they want to put him back on the inside. He said that's where we feel like that's his best position. We want to develop him for the NFL. And my point was, look, that's not Brian Kelly's job, is to develop Harold Perkins for the NFL. Brian Kelly's job is to put Harold Perkins in a position that is going to help LSU win football games. Harold Perkins, NFL coach, can develop him for the NFL. And I know that sounds harsh, but a college football coach's job is to win football games. Like, you don't get a raise for putting good players in the NFL. If you did, Coach O would probably still be coaching here. But he wasn't winning football games, so he got fired. That's what's important, is winning football games, not developing NFL players. Developing players to help you win football games. And more often than not, that turns into success in the NFL. But I hate the idea of putting Harold Perkins back on the inside, because the only sample size that we have of Harold Perkins on the inside was not very good. So I have a lot of reservations about that. Now, of course, Blake Baker has a history of developing linebackers, and he has a history of doing that at LSU with Damone Clark in 2021. Absolutely. And I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I don't like this move in the slightest. But some of the response that I've seen on Twitter, not like necessarily geared toward me, some of it geared toward me, is, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course, that's his best spot. We trust these coaches. They know what they're doing. First of all, are we sure that's his best spot? Or, what have you seen that makes you believe that this is his best spot? I know Brian Kelly said that this is where he's best fit. And Brian Kelly's been doing this for a very long time. He has more football knowledge in his pinky than I have in my entire body. I understand that. But some people make mistakes. They wanted to put him on the inside going into last season. I gave him the benefit of the doubt there. I said, look, if Harold Perkins excels in one role, what can he do with an even larger one? I learned my lesson. It wasn't very good. So why would I have any reason to believe that he would be good on the inside? We watch the same games, do we not? When the only game that we saw him play on the inside, he was a total non-factor. And I understand. And these are good defensive coaches, that Blake Baker is a good coach. But I want to see them do it here before I all of a sudden just say that this is a good decision. I'd like to see it before I give you your flowers. I'm going to see it before I believe it. Because the only thing that I have seen of Harold Perkins on the inside leads me to believe that it's not a very good idea. Don't ever think this. It's somebody, somebody was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Why? I watched the game. I value pass rusher more than I value run stopper. Look at salaries in the NFL. Look and see how much pass rushers in the NFL make. Outside linebackers, DNs, D tackles, Players that get to the quarterback and affect the quarterback, like they're starting to make quarterback money. How much money do inside linebackers make? Not as much, because getting after the quarterback and rushing the passer is a more valuable skill than stopping the run. And I know that the NFL and college football are two different games. I understand that. And, getting after the quarterback, rushing the passer, and stopping the run are two very important aspects of your defense. Like, you have to do both. But I value quarterback getter more than I value run stopper. And an inside linebacker, it's going to be a lot of what Harold Perkins is doing, is stopping the run. And that's very valuable, absolutely. But is that where he's best fit? Because I haven't seen that. Nothing that I have seen with my own two eyes would lead me to believe that's where he should be. Like I said, I know Brian Kelly is a much smarter person than I am. I completely understand that. But they made that mistake last year. I don't want to see them make it again. But look, I hope I'm wrong. Like, I hope that Harold Perkins becomes, one of the first inside linebackers to be taken in the top 3 and the first time since, I don't even know how long. Like, I hope Harold Perkins is, at the Heisman Trophy ceremony as an inside linebacker. Truly, like, I hope that I am wrong. Because if I am wrong, that means that they were right. And I would much rather Brian Kelly and the coaching staff be right than me be right. Because that means you're winning football games. And that means that Harold Perkins is where he needs to be. But I'll believe it when I see it. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, we'll continue to take a look at the recruiting weekend next weekend. Some big names to watch and storylines to follow. All of that coming up next on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.